So today we're going to talk about parents, family in general, because I understand for a lot of people, parents, may not be the primary influencer in your marriage for family members. But I want to talk a little bit about what does family look like with regards to marriage.
All right, let's get into that.
Before we get into today's episode, just wanted to remind you that in the description of the video below, we put links to all of our social media accounts.
You can always reach us with questions or comments about this episode at marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com.
And finally, if you want to support us financially, there is a link to be able to do so at the end of each of the descriptions of our videos. Now, let's get back to the show. Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock, and you've joined us for Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time that we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about that, and how we live that out practically.
That's right. Now today, though, it is a wedding Wednesday.
Yeah, we missed Monday because we are celebrating our wedding. We're celebrating our 18th anniversary.
Man, 18 years, babe. What do you think?
Sometimes it feels like 18 years. Sometimes it feels like 50 years. And sometimes it feels like 18 months,
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
crazy.
just like anything in life.
That's right.
Sometimes it feels like it was a long time ago and sometimes not. It just depends. So,
would you marry me again,
of course.
babe?
Of course I would.
marry you too.
So we got away for a night without the kids. It was really great.
It was really, really great.
And it just kind of threw everything off for us. So
it's great. Had a blast,
but
though.
worthwhile.
Did some fun stuff. It was great. So thanks for bearing with us. Hope you're catching this on Wedding Wednesday. So today, we're going to talk a bit about the role of family in marriage. This is a question that we get an awful lot, which is, oftentimes it's parents, but it certainly could be other folks within your extended kind of family. What role and influence are they supposed to have in marriage? What if your parents or those other family members are really poor influences, right? What if they're, don't understand the purpose of marriage themselves? Maybe they're not Christians, or they just don't have the same beliefs as you do about marriage. What if they're a bit over the top with regards to sticking their nose perhaps where it shouldn't be, or being a bit clingy? We're going to talk about all those things today. So how I wanted to structure this episode, babe, is I thought we would talk a little bit about what is the role of a parent to an adult. Then talk a little bit about what should the role of a parent be in the marriage of their kids. Because we have a lot of parents that listen to this podcast, some with kids that are married or of marrying age, some that are younger, so we can give them an idea of, kind of what we would recommend as far as that goes. Then address a little bit, maybe family situations that are not ideal and how we want to handle that. Sound good?
Yep. Sounds great.
All right. So lead off, babe, then what do you, in your informed opinion, based on what you've read of parenting in the Bible, what should the role of a parent be in the life of their adult children?
Well, we know that the Bible talks about leave and cleave, right? So we know that a husband is joined to his wife and the two shall become one flesh.
Yep. In Genesis 2.
Right. And for that reason,
a man shall leave his father and mother.
Right. Thank you. A man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife.
Right.
Which we call the leave and cleave thing.
Right. It's Christianese.
So, funny, I was listening to something, actually a comedian recently, and she was saying something about her son was getting married, and he was saying, Mom, my wife is going to be my priority, and I need to make her a priority above you. I don't know if there was like an issue going on or whatever. And he was like, it's biblical, Mom. I need to leave my family and kind of I need to put my family under the priority of my wife and really love her and respect her above my family.
Okay.
And the mom was like, so the son was like, this is biblical, Mom. And she was like, "Ugh, why did I ever teach you the Bible?" Again, she was a comedian.
Yeah, it's funny.
But I thought it was a funny thing. And as parents, that's hard to think of our kids
right.
leaving us and all that.
Sure.
But
is that why you don't teach the Bible to the kids?
Oh my gosh, that is so untrue.
Oh.
But it is important that our kids do that. And it's important that
Right.
we teach our kids. This is what's
Agreed.
expected of you
Yeah.
when you get married, that
Right.
you are not under our authority anymore, that you don't report to us anymore. You report to the Lord
Yep.
first, and that you put your spouse as a higher priority than your family,
Right.
including us. And so, as parents, we need to be encouraging our kids from a young age, and certainly at the marrying ages, that you can't stick around here. You know, once you're married, we're not your priority anymore.
Yeah, we're here as sort of a consultant, right?
Yeah.
Would you say like that? That we want to have relationship with you,
Absolutely.
and we certainly don't want to give up the
Closeness.
moral authority in your
Yeah.
life, even though I may have given up rightfully the disciplinarian authority in your life. I still want to be someone you look to as an authority in your life of things that matter to you. I mean, that's our role to be here. But I guess maybe the simple way to say it is, rather than inserting myself into your life from a disciplinarian standpoint, right? I mean, that's what we do now. Our kids screw up, we insert ourselves into their lives. Whereas an adult, I hope I would be invited
Yes.
to be a part of your decision making in your life. And if I'm not, then I'm not. And we need to be prepared for that and okay with
Right.
that as parents.
And in thinking about this, so often we hear parents whose kids are getting married saying, "Oh, she's becoming part of our family. My daughter-in-law, she's becoming part of my family, or my son-in-law is becoming part of our family." And that's sweet.
Sure.
And it's good to think of it like that. But in reality, they're making their own family.
That's right.
And they need to be encouraged to make their own thing and
Right.
make their own family. Not, hey, you're just an extension of us, but really, no, you need to leave this and create your own thing.
Right.
Not the importance of the husband being the authority and the wife submitting to that, and together submitting to each other and to the Lord.
Right.
That needs to be something that's really encouraged by the parents.
Right. So ideally, you have parents that the kids get married and they kind of shove them off into shove them off like a ship, right? Like like launch them off
Yep.
into their own marriage. There is a consultant for them. There is a confidant as far as with the couple to help them, know how to navigate married life. But of course, a lot of folks don't have parents that even know enough to know that type of thing. I mean, that's the reality of the matter. And so,
to be clear, we have parents that listen to our episodes and we had great examples of that. For the most part, our parents were like, "Hey, launch," and
Right.
they were great. Both of our sets of parents were great with letting us launch and leave and cleave, and
that's right.
we had great examples.
That's right. And now at 18 years of marriage, I mean, I have a great relationship with your dad. I have a great relationship with your mom.
Right.
And have, because they weren't overbearing and preserved that sort of moral authority in our lives, that's blossomed into beautiful relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. So that's the ideal, right? So how, as parents, then, should we be thinking about our kid once we've launched them off, as you rightfully mentioned? Then, what advice would you give to parents who have newly married or young married or just married children, as far as what role they can play in that relationship, and maybe just address it generally? And then, what if you see them making, unwise decisions? How might you suggest going about that?
We've never done that, so we're not speaking from a place of like, hey, we've done this well, and
Right.
But we've counseled a lot of people who struggle with this, and so we're
Studied
just
with
coming
the Bible,
from
nice
right.
to say
So
about it.
of course, So the parents' role,
Yeah.
I think, of course, having these discussions before marriage is great rather than just, oh, we're not going to communicate. And then, maybe expectations aren't met on either side.
Okay.
But the parents who want their newly married son or daughter to live in their home, man, we hear that so often, and that's just not, it's sweet and it's
Maybe.
yeah. A lot of times it's like, hey, we're trying to help you out, but it really inhibits the ability of that couple to make their own family.
Yeah, I agree.
And make their own lives and traditions and routines and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a launching, really holding back from that couple launching. I think continuing to, and this happens more with daughters, but if your daughter's coming back to you with, Nathan and I just had this fight about whatever, or I don't think Nathan's doing this right, or whatever, I would really encourage you as a parent to say, I love you. You need to work this out with your spouse.
Right.
And if it's at a level that you guys can't work it out respectfully, then find some mentors to get involved. But we should not be your mentors, because although I may want to be, I don't want to be that involved with the difficulties of your marriage.
Right.
Because I'm biased. First of all,
Right.
I am biased, and that's not fair to your spouse. And also it's going to maybe affect my opinion of your spouse.
Which is also
I don't
not
want
fair.
that. Right. And so I would say with all love, like, hey, if you need help, absolutely seek that help. But it shouldn't be with your parents.
Right. Unless, I feel like we say this all the time, unless it is a physically violent situation.
Yeah. Unless
right.
there's,
I mean, obviously, if your child is coming to you because
they need
they're
refuge,
being physically abused,
right,
that's a completely different
of
thing.
course. Yes.
But other than that, I completely agree with
But
what
setting
you're
up, setting up that expectation before they're married, rather than, oh, they're married and coming to you and now it's a surprise and they feel rejected because you're not
Right.
willing to help.
Right.
But yet you were willing to help when we were dating and engaged. It just is different, right?
Right.
You weren't told to leave and cleave when you're dating and engaged in the Bible. So
there is a shift of authority
Yep.
that happens when we get married, and that's very biblical. That's the leave and cleave thing. We talk about it like cutting the apron strings, and certainly that is a piece of it. But what that verse is really talking about is it's a shift of, authority, right? From your parental authority to the authority that God's designed and structured within the bounds of marriage.
Yep. And as parents too, we have amazing examples of this, again, on both sides.
Yep.
But our parents do not, maybe once or twice in regards to our marriage or parenting, our parents have told us, hey, I think you should. But they do not
Do whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But they do not stick their noses in our business.
Mm-mm.
And I'm sure there's lots of times where they've wanted to with our marriage or our parenting.
That's true.
But they keep their mouth shut, maybe too much actually. But they want to respect our adulthood,
Yep.
and they want to respect our autonomy and the Lord's authority in our life,
Right.
and so they just don't, unless it's a massive thing. Really, once or twice they've said something. So I think as parents, making sure that you're really keeping your mouth shut on, oh, you should do this and you should do that, and oh, don't talk to him, whatever it is,
Right.
really preserves the relationship and really helps with not getting too involved in things that parents just shouldn't be involved in.
Right. So
And that's hard.
Right. So it sounds like what you're saying is really
The parenting needs to go.
yeah, the job is to be there as a resource,
Yep.
not there to insert yourself into the situation. And really go out of your way to preserve that. Hey, I am a resource, a wellspring
Yes.
of wisdom and knowledge. But you got to choose to want to tap into that, because if you don't, I'm not going to force it upon you.
Yeah, here's the designation. My parents and Nathan's parents probably would not be involved if we were to come to them and be like, we're in a fight. Like, I'm going to my parents and I'm in a fight with Nathan and blabbermouthing about him and all that, They would probably say, this is not my business. But if
right.
I'm going to them in an area where, hey, I need some wisdom, like, it's not an active fight. We're not
Sure.
in a fight about something.
Right.
But like, hey, I need some wisdom on how do I whatever.
Uh-huh.
And again, it's not like bashing Nathan, but it's more of, can you speak into my life and how I should handle this, how I need to respond to my husband, or however, whatever that is.
Uh-huh.
They're totally ready to jump in on that,
Sure.
and offer their advice.
Sure.
So that's kind of the designation, because it sounds like we're saying two things, but
Yeah.
like, don't go to your parents, but do go to your parents. We don't go to our parents for issues we need to have resolved between the two of us.
Your parents are not there to be a judge.
Right. But they are there for some wisdom, and they
Right.
have
A consultant.
they can, if you have good parents, they can totally be that.
100%.
They've lived a lot more life than we have.
Okay, so then let's deal with a couple of problematic situations that can arise. How do we handle, as the married couple, how should we honor our parents in a situation where our parents or our spouse's parents are destructive people, right? So let me just define that a little bit by saying they have addiction problems, or they want to, actively encourage immoral or behavior that is against God's best for our marriage, right? These are people that
Or you
don't
just don't
care
like
about
them.
marriage, or no. I'm not talking about parents that you just don't like. I'm talking about parents that they're destructive to marriage, and so but yet we're told in the Bible to honor our father
honor
and
your
mother,
father.
and there's
Yeah,
no
time limit to that.
and there's no really strings attached to that of honor them if they're honorable people.
Yep.
It's just honor them. So how do we honor them in a situation where it can be hard to be around them because they're just destructive individuals?
Yep. So I think in that situation, you and your spouse need to come up with boundaries, healthy boundaries for those people, which of course would look differently for different situations and different people. But that may be, hey, we're going to have lunch on Sunday afternoon. And other than that, we really need to limit the interaction with our with your parents, because they just are destructive. So we'll have lunch at whatever, at a restaurant, we've known people who they have parents who have been to jail and have addiction problems and all that. And of course they don't want them around grandkids alone. So they have to be very careful with boundaries, and those boundaries have to be shared with the parent. Hey, you have had addiction problems. You've been in jail for this sort of thing. It's just not something that we can allow you to be around our kids by yourself. But we're happy to have lunch with you on Sundays, and so and in extreme circumstances, you may need to cut a parent out of your life if they're not respecting boundaries, or if you really feel like this is not a relationship I can continue with. And with all respect, really respect, you need to tell the parent that, and not leave them, not just ghost them. That's not honorable, but tell them, maybe that's in a letter, but tell them, hey, this is our boundary,
something I want to just highlight real quick while you're thinking here. That piece you said is really important about you as a couple have to recognize you're a separate family. A lot of couples really struggle with this. idea that, well, I'm not honoring my mother and father if I don't give them the role and all the benefits of being a mother and a father like the Cleavers were, right? And that's just not that's not accurate, right? You can honoring your father and mother does not mean obey your father and mother. Yeah. It does not mean act like your father and mother don't have issues if they're individuals that have these issues we're talking about. And you need to recognize that you and your spouse are a unit. The two of you, you are one. So don't fall into this trap of feeling like, hey, if we have some really clear, strict boundaries with regards to my parents or his parents or her parents, we're not honoring them. Because you're allowed to have those boundaries. The most important thing for me, and I think maybe you would agree with this, is that the two of you are on the same page.
Totally.
And that means there needs to be spoken expectations. Because where family situations can get really complicated is when there are unspoken expectations that are going unmet. And oftentimes it's just the reality that your spouse doesn't know all the background about your family that you know.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be some time spent just sitting down and going, hey, tell me about how you feel about your parents. Tell me about how you feel about your aunts and uncles and your extended family. Like, what role do you see them playing in our marriage? And similarly, both spouses.
Yep.
Because oftentimes we've found that people are like, well, I guess I just always had this expectation that, like, we'd go over to my parents' house every Sunday after church and have lunch and hang out for the afternoon because that's what we always did growing up. And the other spouse is like, what? Right. That's like 1 out of the 7 days of every week that we're spending a significant piece of it with your family. It just seems like a lot, right? So having that conversation early.
Yeah, and if you find it hard to honor either your parents or your in-laws because they're not living respectable lives, remember a few things. They maybe they didn't raise, but more likely than not, they raised the person that you love. And maybe they didn't do it well, but they did it none the same. But they did it, and they had a part in that, and you love that person, and so you can honor them for now. You have this person that you love, and I was actually just telling my kids this today because we were talking about bullies and hurts and that sort of thing, and we were saying, even somebody who's hurt you or somebody that you love, Jesus died for them just the same as he died for you. And he counted them as valuable as he counts you. Yep. And you need to remember that they are just as valuable in Jesus' eyes as you are. And so because of that, we can honor other people. We don't have to be their best friend. They don't even have to be somebody that we choose to spend our friendship with or our lives with, but we can honor them and respect them simply because Jesus sees them as valuable enough to die for.
Yeah.
And so I think continuing to remember that, and we're not going to affect anybody. This is a Christian podcast. We're not going to affect anybody for the Lord if we're treating them like poop, right?
Ooh,
so
poopy. Nice.
So if we're remembering that this person needs Jesus,
right,
and I'm not going to show them Jesus by disrespecting them, right, and showing them dishonor. So for that very reason alone, I should honor them. Yeah. And maybe that doesn't look like being close with them, but it at least needs to be respectful. And hey, this person needs Jesus. How can I help them find Jesus?
Right. So transitioning then to another situation we hear about quite a bit. Let's kind of go the opposite way. What happens if your family has a level 5 clinger problem going on? And we've probably all known couples like this. And we've done podcasts before dealing with the spouse part of this. But even if there's not it's typically a husband that's too attached to his
Mama?
family or his mother. Although there's oftentimes that it's a daughter too attached to her dad.
Or mom.
But what do we do in these situations where, setting that part aside for a second, where the family is inserting themselves into everything, right? And being overwhelming, showing up at the house, just kind of being a bit much. How do we handle that in a way that's honoring?
Two things. If that seems to be okay with you and your spouse, then, and you feel like, yeah, this is great and it doesn't affect us being us, but then fine. Right? We're not saying your family can only be involved with you this much per week or whatever. So if that works for you guys, great.
I would say with the caveat of, are you actually walking in the oneness of your marriage?
Right.
Because there are couples that are confused about whether or not they are teenagers living under their parents' roof. Or whether they're adults. I mean, there just are.
Yeah.
So, when you get married, and I'm not saying you can never live at home. I'm saying, what's the mentality, right? Is the mentality, hey, it's us. It's you and me, babe. We're one. Or is it, well, it's us, but also mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of living under their roof because they're mom and dad. And we're just, we're here.
Sure.
So anyway, that'd be my caveat to what you were saying. Otherwise, I agree with you. So you're talking about if you want a close relationship with your parents, great.
Yes, and closeness doesn't necessarily mean days of the week that you see them, but
sure.
If I think you and your spouse need to be on the same page. So if one of you is saying this is too much, they're around too much, and then figure out a way to compromise with your spouse. Figure out a way that you guys can be on the same page. Once you are, then the best way to handle that is the biological child of that family needs to go to that family and be the bearer person
of bad news,
the person talking to them. So let's say it's Nathan's family that's like, oh, they just stop by every day and we decide we're not able to be our own thing. We're actually just part of their family. We gotta set some boundaries here.
They're constantly prying. Right. And this can happen just as easily in Christian homes. What things are you and Andrea struggling with that I can be praying for you? Right. I mean, we can do, like, there are ways people can be intrusive, that are not appropriate. So, but I agree with you.
True.
If it's my family being intrusive, I need to go to them.
Right. And we could get to the same page. Okay, these should be our boundaries. This is what this should look like. Then Nathan, maybe with me there, probably good with me there. But anyway, needs to be, the bearer of the news saying, hey guys, we love you. We love spending time with you. Use the compliment sandwich.
Oh dear.
I'm going to give you good things. Then I'm going to shoot it straight with maybe some bad news. And then I'm going to compliment you again. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need to be angry about it, but respectfully going to your family and saying, this isn't working. We need to come up with some boundaries here. We love you. This is it.
Yeah. I think
the way to handle that.
If it's a Christian environment, then going, hey, Andrew and I need a chance to just make sure we're right before the Lord, the two of us, and really make sure we're walking in our oneness. We need an opportunity to do that. And so we need a time of kind of some distance between you guys and us, and here's what that looks like.
Yep. And you might find too that a few years down the road you can change those boundaries. When Nathan and I went through the hardest parts of our marriage, when we were reconciling, we realized we really need we need to put up some boundaries with our families so that we can figure out who we are.
Right. And as we've mentioned, we had great families that respected our boundaries. Yep. We just needed, like, it was for us. Like, we just needed to sort of insulate ourselves together to focus on each other.
Yep. We needed time to figure out who we were, what was, all the things.
Right.
And so we changed some of our boundaries, and now our boundaries don't look anything like they did in 2012.
Sure.
But that's because we've been able to change those, and that's fine. So it's not necessarily like, oh, this is it forever.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Right. No, that's right. That's good. Any final sort of things, babe, when you think about family and the role family plays in marriage and
Yeah, we talk about it in regards to parents, but this could be an aunt or
you
siblings
bet,
or
100%.
anything. It's just really important understanding that when you get married, you become a family of your own, and that is your priority.
Yep.
And you are responsible first to that family, and not to your birth family or the family that you were raised in. And that shift can be really hard, but make the shift. Choose to have the hard conversations if you need to.
Right.
It'll be so good
Right.
for your marriage.
Right. That's great. That's great, babe. Thanks so much for bringing it with regards to how our families deal with us in marriage. Hope that was helpful for you. Would love to get feedback from you on what it is that you do to sort of have proper boundaries between your family and you in marriage. Or if you're dating, love to know, or engaged, how are you planning on doing this with regards to your family? So feel free to put those down in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube or on our website, Marriage by Design Podcast, or marriagebydesign.podbean.com, or go on over to Facebook and leave us a comment in the dedicated post for this video. Guys, just a few more days until Christmas. Hope that you're all ready to go and that you're going to enjoy some time with that family and friends, celebrating the birth of Christ and Santa and all the other things that we love. So thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you being here. Remember, God is for your marriage. Have a great week.